far from the custom tattoo inception point of Vancouver, beyond the Great Divide, one guy struck out to make a name for himself. Rather than being content to work in the shadows of his contemporaries, he stepped up onto the international stage, leaving a legacy of influence across the globe.
Everybody knew who Paul Jeffries was. That guy had a really distinct style.
And to be totally honest, his stuff captured me more than what Ed Hardy's stuff. I liked Paul's better. It sort of appealed to me more.
In the 80s, 90s, Paul Jeffries was like the king of tattooing. It wasn't just in Canada.
I think it's probably because I'm the most traveled Canadian tattoo artist. I've been doing conventions in the States and Europe, and like Hanky Panky used to have that big one every 3 years. There was never anybody else from Canada there, you know, so I kind of was known as the Canadian guy.
Well, like when you think of tattooing back in those days, certain names come to mind. Like in North America, you think of Ed Hardy, and you think of Bob Roberts, Leo Zaluta, but you also think of the Dutchman, and you also think of Paul Jeffries.
So I was hanging around at Brian Zuck's shop a lot, getting tattooed by Brian, and I was thinking, man, you know, I should maybe give this a whirl, you know? And but I didn't want to step on the toes of Dave Shore, who had tattooed me numerous times, and Brian. I wanted to be good, and I didn't want to be their competition. So I figured I'm going to save up enough money, $5,000. I'm going to find a place in Canada where I can go where there's no other tattooers, and I'll make my name there.
People that were getting tattooed, they were driving from Winnipeg, from Saskatchewan, Vancouver. I mean, that was unheard of where I was from. You know, people would actually drive and then sit out the front of the shop and wait.
They used to come from all over Western Canada. I would get to the shop at, like I said, 9 or 10 in the morning, and there'd be a parking lot filled. There'd be people sleeping on the concrete. There'd be people in the back of their trucks who've been up all night partying and drunk. So now we have to tell them, it's like, listen, buddy, we can't tattoo you. And they, you know, I drove from Saskatchewan, but you're like, yeah, but you're pissed. You know, it's like it's party in the parking lot. You know, it was crazy. It was a tattoo factory. It was like the place where everybody wanted to go in like Western Canada, and it was busy, and it was one after another. And when as soon as you open the door every day, it was like boom, 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 close the door. Next day, it's like open the door, boom, 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 boom. And it was like, you never got any rest.
One of those guys, along with your Ed Hardys and your Jack Rudies. Paul Jeffries was a guy who was in that mix. He was friends with Ed Hardy. He was in those magazines. He was at the parties that you'd see. Who's this? Like some Canadian guy from Calgary.
The first few pieces that I really saw that had a big impact on me after I was getting into actually tattooing were mostly Paul Jeffries tattoos, because I saw a lot of them since he was in Calgary and I was in Edmonton. So there was a lot of guys coming into the shop, pulling up their sleeve or taking their shirt off, and it's like, holy shit. You know, like it's mind-blowing when you see stuff like that initially.
I don't know how many back pieces he's done. He was always doing sleeves or back pieces since the time I basically remember. It would be like the odd Saturday he'd do flash designs or whatever, but he's always done really big work.
Oh, I think to this day, if I see a Paul Jeffries tattoo, I can tell it was his, no matter what era it was from.
What is it about his work that makes it so iconic?
Well, he doesn't outline very well, and no, I'm just kidding. No, he took like his own thing and added it to like an existing style. He had kind of, I don't know how, he made everything look tattooy, but it was like on a different end.
At a time when tattooing was emerging from its traditional American approach and information was not readily available or shared, Styles were being blended and fused to create a new look. Tattooists were experimenting with different influences from Japan, blending them with dark, greasy imagery that appealed to the badasses of the day. The style was infectious. It quickly spread.
Paul Jeffries' style, I like to call it biker Jap, right? It was Japanese, but it just had that rough, it wasn't never traditional.
It was strong, it was kind of, again, that West Coast kind of greaseball style, you know, and it was tough looking tattoos, and they looked tough, those tattoos, man.
Paul Jeffries' Japanese stuff was amazing because it was so solid and it was like sort of biker / Japanese, you know, it had that influence to it. So it was really attractive to me at that point.
That was something that was really important to Paul, was laying out the tattoo on the body. And it was something that stood out right from the word go. You know, it flowed with the muscles and things like that. I asked him about it one time and he said it, you know, like talking to Horiyoshi, he'd been to Japan, he'd learned a bit from him, and then just from looking at Ed Hardy's work. But also the Dutchman. I mean, like John the Dutchman had briefly worked with Paul and they discussed drawing. Like, if you go back, it was Paul taught or helped teach John tattooing, and John helped teach Paul drawing, artwork, you know, and John was very particular about things on the body, and it really showed with both those artists, and their work, it was like something that was just designed for the body at that time, which, you know, nobody was doing. Everybody else was just doing one spot tattoos, you know. So the two of them together was very important. They complemented each other, but it showed in their tattooing, which their tattooing influenced so many people.
Paul, he was, after Mike Malone, he was the first one to put out amazing flash that everybody could use.
Yeah.
And again, we actually both tangled on it, you know, like imagine all those back bodysuits that's been done with his stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I was one of them, you know, I have people that are covered with his dragons, you know, changed a bit. And
both Henning and myself took Paul's influence back to our respective countries. Like Henning definitely took it back to Denmark, and Henning's such a huge influence in Europe that it did spread a lot.
He brought a different side of tattooing out that a lot of guys of his generation were starting to bring out, and that was taking it away from like pick the flash, get the tattoo, and go kind of thing, to something creative where they could come to somebody that could actually fucking draw something and ask for it, and that guy could make it happen for them.
I think in early 2000, Paul Jeffries' shop was at the forefront of custom tattooing in Calgary. He had Dustin Croce and Brett Schwinn, both very talented young tattooers who were taking everything that these masters had taught them and they were running with it. After Dustin Croce had left, James Tex came in to fill his position at Smiling Buddha, and James's illustration was second to none. And he definitely took all those lessons and ran with it, as did Brett, as did Dustin. They took those lessons and really, it was a seed within them, and that really flourished in every one of those people. And even subsequently from those guys, each one of them went on to influence whole groups of other people. So in essence, each one of these old masters influenced groups of tattooers who in turn influenced other groups of tattooers. And you see that alive and well today.
something behind your eyes, the way you're talking. It's a cheap disguise. We were made to chase the light, but you got